So the question, what does it mean to be critical? I'll just give you a few quick questions. It looks at, and again, this goes back to the question of post-colonialism. Whose ways of knowing does your curriculum value? What is considered the best kind of knowledge? It's when the researcher is objectified, removed, detached. Is neutrality valued in the curriculum? What do we mean, for example, by is universality important? Are statistics considered the most valuable form of knowledge? So this idea of a politics of knowledge is whose knowledges gets to count is the most important in the construction of your syllabus. These are important issues, again, looking at people who come from different traditions of identifying what counts as worth knowing, transmitting it to other students. All of these ideas look at the idea of politics of knowledge. Politics of language. This is the idea that language is never neutral. It's always involved, implicated in the construction of social realities, of conditioning what we think to be true or false. I mean, if you look right now at the struggle over language, one of the most interesting cases right now is in the election. Issues about what does it mean, security, terrorism. Those two events, the killing in Montreal and the murder in Ottawa, are these the acts of psychopaths or the acts of international jihadists? The struggle over language is not just a label over language. It's over what does the language that we assign, what does it allow, what kinds of social resources and responses does it validate? So it's not just an innocent battle in the House of Commons. Do we call this terrorism? Do we call this a crazy psychopath? It is about language authorizing responses. This is very much, again, the politics of language. Language is never neutral. These naming practices have consequences. They mobilize resources, they silence some groups, they empower others. And then another thing about language to think about is the relationship that we give to teachers and students. If we think of language as out there, already fixed, a code, then the role of students is to memorize, to learn other people's language. But if we start to think of language from fundamentally situated or constructivist terms, where meanings take on, and Bakhtín's notion of utterances are important. If we think of language emerging from interaction, which in a sense the interactive and Vygotskian tradition reinforces, then we place teachers and students in a far more important role. We see them as active meaning makers. And again, that puts a different perspective on the notion of interaction. Politics of identity, again, Norton's work is so important. This idea that identities are constructed in classrooms, that the way in which Jim Cummins' work was always really inspirational to me. Jim Cummins talks about the interpersonal spaces of teachers and students as central to students' identities. And he talks about that relationship as one of the potential of coercive or collaborative relations of power. So again, if we think of identity as constructed in our classrooms, then it sets our relationships in a whole different set of issues of responsibility, ethics, and possibility. So these are, again, the kinds of things that critical work involves. And the politics of pedagogy, looking at agency, power, looking at how the classroom relates to the world outside the classroom. And the final thing is this issue of fallacies. I think of critical work as you don't have to do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'll give you a couple examples. Critical work, a little later on. Critical work might be, you might not be in a program where you have a lot of opportunities. Kumar has often talked about this. You might be in a place of high stakes testing, a very rigid curriculum, and your opportunity to do small things and make a difference in terms of power relations, in terms of your testing opportunities, or in terms of your curriculum, may be minimal. But the key thing is looking for those kinds of places and spaces to do that.
Oh no,
We've had a really
We relate to your comments right now.
Oh, yeah, so I mean, and not a politics of despair. I have to tell you the anecdote. I was teaching a class called the Sociopolitics of Language Teaching, and one of my best students came up to me and said about halfway through the course, "Brian, I think I have to quit the course." And I went, "Why?" She said, "Critical teaching is so depressing. I've just been reading about linguistic genocide and linguistic imperialism. I don't want to be a teacher." And I said, and it was a real eye-opener for me. And I said, yes. And Paulo Freire says there's got to be a pedagogy of hope. That being a critical teacher does not mean you cannot still have fun. That you cannot still find places in the curriculum to have hope. And it doesn't have to just be a politics of despair, because that was kind of an eye-opener for me. Okay, let's go on to the next slide.